This march to $50,000, is this sustainable or is this just a blip?
Hey, Emily, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, great question. It is very much sustainable. I think, what we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks is this crawl towards this 50K mark. This was very much a psychological price point for us to get to. And not just that, Ethereum inching closer to 3.5K as well. One thing that's very different here in terms of the price rise up here versus April, as you mentioned before in the recent 3-month all-time high, is really what accelerated the price rally. Here in this last weekend, we saw a lot of at-the-money call option buyers come in and accelerate that price point beyond the 50K. What we were seeing in April, and we're not necessarily seeing today, is leverage. And so you're not seeing as much of these levered longs, as well as funding rates are marginally positive. You're seeing GBTC is still at a discount, and you're seeing levered call option demand still at lows. And so really, I think the narrative here is that there were few notional wallets that were able to move this price point beyond that psychological 50K point. That being said, if you look at what I consider just the major statistic is really the cryptocurrency dominance. If you look at Bitcoin dominance, you compare it to Ethereum dominance, Bitcoin at lows of 40%, Ethereum nearing highs of 20%. Really, that narrative is reflected across the institutional investor that we see today. And that's really this excitement across Ethereum and across protocols where there's measurable cash flows. And so, it's very much, this diversification across these different protocols.
Now, you run institutional coverage. What are the risks to the current run? What could derail this, given the drip dropping, for example, of regulatory signals we're getting from the SEC?
Yeah, that's a great question. Listen, at the end of the day, institutional investors want clarity around cryptocurrency. And so, regulation is very much top of mind. As you had mentioned, I think previously last week, Gary Gensler and his statements around DeFi, this is something that we're all excited to see what direction the SEC goes in. And, we're going to work together with that and those requirements. And I think it's exciting for institutional investors. Again, there's a lot of people who still cannot access this space because there is regulatory unclarity. And so that'll open up a much larger use case and players into the space.
Now, there's a lot of debate happening within the crypto community, Bitcoin versus Ethereum, Bitcoin maximalism. Gary Tan, one of the original investors in Coinbase, got into some trouble for some things he said on our show, which the maximalists didn't like. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Probably better to be agnostic. The reality is it's up to the software engineers and the creators to actually create platforms that enable things that are actually usable. And for me, it's just, I can't look at DeFi, I can't look at NFTs, and I frankly can't look at the stream of really smart software engineers who come into our offices every day and say that, Ethereum isn't the platform to sort of focus on and to beat right now.
He got a lot of flack on Twitter there for saying folks should be agnostic rather than partial to either or. What do you think? Is it Bitcoin or bust or no?
Let's take it one step further. Let's diversify outside of just Bitcoin and Ethereum. To be honest, I agree with Gary, but I'll take it one step further. Today, in the same way in traditional world, you wouldn't just invest in Google for search in the same way Facebook for social and YouTube for video. You would get a diversified portfolio across those three. And similarly, what we're seeing is that NFTs will use a different blockchain than Ethereum. And some lending and borrowing platforms or derivatives will use a different blockchain than Ethereum. I think the other thing too is, especially following the Ethereum hard fork, London EIP 1559, and the uncertainty around this transition from proof of work to proof of stake that should be happening in the next year, institutional investors are looking for a way to diversify and hedge against that uncertainty. And so what we're seeing, at least, especially in the last couple of weeks, is these comparable Ethereum-like alternatives. These are layer ones that include Solana, they include Terra and the Luna ecosystem, they include Cosmos, Near, Avalanche on Polkadot, as well as a number of others, in addition to all of the interest around NFTs and the metaverse.